It's a hot, muggy, not a hot, it's a muggy. It's like this tropical air is in here. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's hot, but it is very humid. I'm here at Jockey's Ridge State Park, and I hope your school year has started off and you're doing really well. Fall is here now. Of course, on the Outer Banks, we have a long kind of drawn out, like sort of a summer kind of, it's kind of like summer, like the Outer Banks is totally different than most places. We don't really, you know, we have those warm nights and everything until the water cools off. So we have basically the heat capacity of water. So water can store a lot of heat energy, and it takes a while for that heat energy to dissipate from water. It's really good at holding heat. And it also takes a while for water to heat up. That's why when you boil water, you gotta sit there and wait, because water it's called the heat capacity. It has, it's like a thermobank. Water can hold a lot. Salts are even better. Salts can hold a lot of heat and maintain heat for a very long time before they boil. So anyhow, it's an Outer Banks, early Outer Banks fall weather. It's hurricane season. There's a couple of storms off the coast, so it's really humid and not too terribly hot, but humid. If the sun comes out, it's gonna warm up a lot. But you know, science and learning and all of these things that we can apply and that can be practical knowledge are very important. But it brings up a good point. And the point is that we have to have a good, healthy balance between understanding that we can't learn everything for ourselves just through observation and living. That's not the way it works. We have to learn from what other people have done, and we have to learn from all sorts of sources of information. But we also have to be cautious, and this is one of the real balancing acts of life, is that we have to be very cautious about understanding that just because we've learned something in school or from a book or from somebody that seems to be knowledgeable in what they're doing, is that doesn't mean that it's completely right, that it can't be disproven, or that we know everything. We still have to question, and we still have to stay creative, and we still have to use our imagination, and we still have to allow room for these outside opinions and ideas that might not at the time be part of the mainstream. And you can look at this at every level of society, from science to politics. There's things that you can see the evidence of this in the short term, and like just, you know, things that happen within like even days or weeks. They're kind of what we kind of say is like a fast moving subject matter. You might get one piece of information in the morning and think that that's right, and by the afternoon it might be completely wrong or half wrong or whatever. But then there's even more things that have been more relied upon for long periods of time, centuries, and maybe even longer, maybe thousands of years. And then all of a sudden, you know, there's some new discovery and things get questioned, and maybe, you know, there's some truth in the old thing. Maybe it's just completely disproven. Maybe it's just that there was a different way of looking at it that's a better explanation, and then sometime in the future that's going to be disproven. There's only really a very few things that even come close to absolute truth, and even those things have a good possibility of getting overturned with some future knowledge or understanding of the universe. You know, there was Newtonian physics, which is still very useful, but you know, we came along in the late 19th century and early 20th century, this idea of relativity, which Albert Einstein gets most of the credit for, but there was a lot of people seeing these things. He was actually part of a group that was uncovering. Even Galileo actually put forth a lot of ideas that were fundamental to the idea of relativity. So, but it wasn't all one person. It was one person building on top of another person. However, Newtonian physics is still very useful. So it's not as if it's completely wrong. It's just that it's not a complete explanation for things. And there's what we call the first principles of physics. It's thermodynamics, and they're pretty solid. It's very hard to in the world that we live in today to do anything that would even come close to disproving these what are called first principles of physics. But it doesn't mean that there won't be a deeper and better understanding in the future. And so this is an important thing, not the physics part of it, unless you're going to be a physicist or whatever. It's just the idea of just because you learn something or you meet somebody who is well educated and highly learned in a certain subject matter, that means that it's completely correct, or it could be completely incorrect. And even worse, people that use these kind of credentials, when you can even do it yourself and fool yourself. Hopefully you don't do it to fool other people, to fool other people. That's a very common thing for people to obtain credentials, and then to use that as a way to manipulate others. So you have to balance between you got to learn. I mean, you can't be scared of learning. You can't be scared of studying. You can't be scared of obtaining knowledge. But then you also have to learn the skill of ascertaining from that knowledge things that might need to be questioned, and keeping your mind open and free to perceive things in new and different ways, and to balance between letting other people's opinions into your thinking while also filtering them. It's all just a balancing act. But where it comes in, maybe most importantly in the practical everyday sense, is just keeping yourself out of trouble. So a lot of times it's people, and even especially people that we give authority to, like elected people, or it's really bad when people unfortunately join the military, for example, to do something really good, and then now they're under the command of just other human beings. There's and these people, very often history has just got documentation and documentation and documentation over and over again of how people have been abused and hurt under authority. So my good friend there, Freddie, he was stationed at Camp Lejeune back when he was in the Marines, and they knew the water had toxins in it, and they kept giving it to the soldiers there anyways. And now many people, including him, are very sick because of that. That's because it's very hard under those conditions to question authority. In fact, a part of what you're doing in those conditions is giving up your rights to question authority. So when you do that, you better really try to do it when there's something very important reason to do it, and B, or whatever, because you do it with people that, with the best of your judgment, and that's still a very hard thing to do, are doing what you can only determine is the right thing to be doing. And there's plenty of examples of that too. I mean, there's many examples of where we've had leaders who have, throughout history, who have done very good things, and it's still required other men and women to follow them. And so it's not that there's not both sides of the coin. There are many incidences of a leader leading people to do what has ultimately turned out to be a good thing. But then you need to have some principles to guide you on that. So, what kind of things do we have to fight for? Or what kind of things do we have to jeopardize our health and wellness for? Those are big questions. And so this idea that not to get indoctrinated in any school of thought with things that you don't think should ever be questioned. Everything always needs to have a process for questioning it. And you're not going to be perfect at it. We're going to make lots of mistakes, but you still have to do those things. And you need to go about things in a humble manner. because when we're humble, we think much more clearly. Being humble pretty much just means putting your emotions and primitive desires on the back burner, which is not always that easy to do. But when we do that, we do things much more cleanly and with much less waste, and with and the best outcome comes from that for everybody. It's not to mean that you can't use motivation. I'm not, it's a bit of a balancing act. I mean, we obviously have things that motivate us, otherwise we'd just be like a rock. I mean, we can't ignore the fact that we're human. I'm not trying to say that, but you do have to, do things with an aspect of being humble, in order to really do things the best way, and being thankful and grateful, and realizing that you might have gifts that another person doesn't have. That doesn't make you better than them. It doesn't make you worse than them. It just means that and then you can also look at another person and they have gifts, and you understand that that person has gifts, and how that's important to us as a society, and how we can all work together. And if we're all kind of thinking about freedom and what's the best outcome for everybody, and usually that also ultimately means the best outcome for ourselves. There's a lot of people that get confused with greed and having more for yourself as being the best outcome. But if you live in a dystopian society, or everybody around you is miserable and you're rich, that's not a better outcome. So just remember to question things in school, in your reading, in your association with other people, with your choices about where you're going, setting goals. I keep reiterating this. You just got to set goals. Just like when you were on your scooter, you wanted to learn how to go further on your scooter, to the next mailbox, and then another mailbox, and then further down the street, and you set these goals. And I think it's very, very important to set goals. So I love you, and just enjoy your time every day. Be grateful for it here on planet Earth. I love you.